welcome to Hatching for Health, the Jessica Hatch Show. Did you know that almost 500,000 adults and children around the country rely on feeding tubes? Well, that is a fact that I learned tonight from Autumn, who is going to join us from Whole Story Mills, who has a little girl that uses a feeding tube, which is part of her reasoning behind starting this company. But first, to let you know, our sponsor for tonight's episode is BioMist International. So thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. So Autumn, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. So where are you calling in from?
I'm in California near Sacramento.
Fantastic. Wish you could be here on set, but hey, if we can get a hold of someone in California, that's even better, with flying you all the way here. So tell us about Whole Story Mills. I know that your little girl personally, has a feeding tube, and I want to know about her as well. But so actually tell us a little bit. So her name is Story Grace, and if you can share with us her story.
Sure. Yeah, Story Grace right now is 6 years old. She was diagnosed with chromosomal abnormalities at birth. And so what happens is she has 7q36 deletion. So it's a very rare deletion. And then she has 20p11 through 13 duplication. And that's also very rare. I've never met anyone with that duplication. And what happens when you have these chromosomal abnormalities is, it creates your body a little bit differently than how the rest of us are created. So she has brain malformations. She has microcephaly. She is legally blind and hard of hearing. She has kidney disease and severe osteoporosis. So she's had broken bones even as a little tiny one. And so,
wow.
And she's just really fragile. And then of course she has the feeding tube because she can't eat by mouth. And
that is a lot. So was this something when she was born, the diagnosis were, already there, or was it things that began to happen?
So, I also have 4 boys, and we went into this ultrasound hoping for a girl, right? And we got the good news. We're having a little girl, so excited. And I remember driving home, and I'm just kind of thinking of all the little tea parties and frilly pink things we're going to be doing, right? And I'm looking at the ultrasound, and I notice that she's measuring behind. And I'm like, that's kind of strange, because I had twins and they didn't even measure behind, and it didn't set well with me. And I started being concerned, and they finally referred me to a specialist, and we did an MRI. And they, from that MRI, they told us that she would, be born severely disabled, that she would maybe live a year or 2.
Oh my goodness.
It was pretty brutal.
It must have been shocking. So when you say that the ultrasound showed, there was a term that you used, I'm not familiar with it. Explain that to me.
So when they did the ultrasound, they showed a smooth brain for Story Grace. Okay. And that is a condition called Lisencephaly. And with Lisencephaly, kiddos typically only live a year or 2. Mm-hmm. And with, the further diagnosis of the chromosomal abnormalities, her brain did improve some. So she does have some folds, but she has, brain malformations. And so, she will probably still have a shorter life and always struggle, but she is this happy, sweet little girl. And, even with all these hardships, because it's not easy having a child and to watch her struggle, right? To have a child that has so many concerns and things you have to look out for, right? But I always talk about, before she came into our world, it was like I saw life in black and white, and now I feel like I see it in this rich color, because she's just brought so much joy, and you appreciate every little milestone, right? Because for me, with the 4 boys, of course they're gonna start crawling, of course they're gonna smile, of course they're gonna walk, and then you have a child that I don't know if she will even smile. It's like that might not happen. And eventually she did smile, and now she's even crawling around. And so it's just so precious to see.
I bet. So the things that, like are very typical in your 4 boys that you've been fortunate to have healthy, I guess 2 of them are twins and then you have the 2 others. So it was like 3 different pregnancies. But I mean, to have all of them and healthy and, and then to have the little girl that you always wanted. I mean, what was that like for your husband and you, like in that moment when they gave you the news that, these were, the way that she was going to be born?
Yeah. So yeah, it was obviously like heartbreaking and just so difficult. And I remember in that moment when they're giving us this really difficult news, just everything went still for me, like very, very still. And I didn't cry. I didn't fall to pieces. I kept it together because this is my time with the doctor and my little girl was struggling and I wanted to figure out how I could do everything I could to help her, right? So this is my moment. Like I have to be strong because I have a child that maybe she won't live a long life, but I'm going to give her the best life possible. And the way that I know to do that is sit there, be engaged, keep myself together, and ask all the questions I need of the doctor just to make sure that I'm prepared as a parent.
Of course. You are a very, very strong mother. Listening to the story brings me to tears. But I think the strength that you have just as already being a mother with your boys and for your husband's sake, it sounds like you are definitely one of the stronger of your family. So she learning about all of these various conditions that essentially make up really what's going on. It's not really one thing, it's many. Like what are some of the doctor visits and what do things look like for you? I mean, you mentioned right. So she is legally blind, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So she has cortical visual impairment. So what that means is she can see, her vision is perfect, but her brain doesn't process. Okay. Because she has the brain malformations, right? So her brain doesn't always process what she sees. So she may see a person in front of her and know it's a woman, but not know it's her mom, right? Or she may see a chair and not understand how to sit in it. And they also say sometimes it can be like looking through Swiss cheese, like she may look off to the other direction, but be actually looking at you for this little spot. So it's a very interesting, it's got, some people are more severe and I can tell her vision has improved some, but it's still a little bit different. Like when she's like looking at you, she's not really looking at you. She's looking in a different direction often. And so, and then as far as the rest of the doctor visits go, we probably have a dozen providers that, we meet with and, go over, do check-ins with for her just to make sure she is as well as she can be. And so, it's a lot for special needs families, out there. They are all they know what I'm talking about. They go through this. It's like, you're not just living your normal life. Yeah. You're living a life with going to all these providers and trying to educate yourself and learn. And it's a hefty load. It's basically a full-time job, just, attending doctor's appointments and, doing all the extra stuff, making sure insurance is paying for your, all your appointments and everything. It's busy.
The co-pays alone, with or without insurance, it's like, there's always that copay regardless of deductibles. And I'm sure, so is a lot of the circumstances that she has, is insurance cover a lot of it, or is there, it does? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. We're very fortunate.
That's great. So as far as so her prognosis, the main, you mentioned the brain is that kind of the main diagnosis that she had?
Right. So the main diagnosis is the chromosomal abnormalities, which have caused, the brain malformations and the microcephaly and, all these other things that come into it. And so that's our main diagnosis, is the chromosomal abnormalities. Okay.
So there is the chromosomes. I mean, there's so many conditions that I hear about, and they're so different, with each and every chromosome on what's, what's missing off the top of it. I mean, it's, unbelievable that they, that we're even able to diagnose those things and,
Yes.
in that depth. So she personally has a feeding tube. Is that how she gets like fed with everything, or is there anything else?
Yes.
She's really?
Right. So everything she has goes through the feeding tube, all her water, all her food. We can give her some little taste of like purees by mouth, but she'll only take like a few tablespoons. So it's more like they call it for pleasure, right?
Okay.
So, which I love for her because I'm like, I enjoy eating so much. I mean, how do you go without eating, right? So it's such a thing that makes me happy to see her being able to taste and try little things. We need all the gifts that we can get, right?
Yeah. So on a daily basis, do you get to do like a few little bites of something through the mouth?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll just give her like a little applesauce or maybe some pudding to try, or, just something that's a little bit thicker so it moves slowly and she has time to kind of figure out, okay, how do I get this to the back of my throat? How do I swallow it? Something nice and, a little bit thicker so it doesn't move fastly.
Yeah. So we do have to take a commercial break, but this is going to lead us right to Whole Story Mills. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about how you began this company and all the things you're doing for children and adults all around the world. So we will be right back after this commercial break.
Guests in your home should only include the ones you invite. When it's time to unwind and catch up with friends, the last thing you need is more work to do. The BioMist mosquito elimination system will put your mind at ease and entertains those unwanted guests, giving you the undivided quality time, focus, and attention you and your guests deserve. BioMist mosquito elimination system will also rid your home from webs and spiders while eliminating mosquitoes carrying mosquito-borne illnesses such as West Nile, dengue fever, and others.
Welcome back to Hatching for Health. If you have just joined us, we have Autumn on the show. We were just talking to her about her little girl story, Grace, and about the company that she created known as Whole Story Mills. So Autumn, welcome back. So what made you want to create a formula company? I mean, that's, a lot of work first off, and just the idea behind that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I actually got a divorce after my daughter was, a year old. Things are really tough in a special needs family, and about 80% of, special need families, they divorce. And so I was out there trying to figure out a way, like, how do I help my kids get out in the nature? How do I do something good for my family, right? And so I started hiking and backpacking. And then I'm backpacking, but I'm like, how do I blend these real foods out in the backcountry? I can't keep them refrigerated. What is the answer, right, for this? So I had to come up with, I searched all over. I'm like, I could just find a meal replacement, right? I can find a meal replacement and then feed it to Story Grace through the feeding tube. But after looking at the labels, that absolutely was not going to work. The quality wasn't okay. The macros weren't okay. And so what I did is I decided to make my own formula, and I did a powder so that it was lightweight. I would be in the mountains and I would filter my water from the stream and I would add it to the powder. I would shake it up and put it through the feeding tube. And then the rest of us can also use it because I drink it orally like a shake. It's great. It's got fresh fruits and veggies. It's balanced macroly. And so it's just a great option for the entire family when we're out backpacking.
This company was created how long ago?
So I've been working on formulas for, over 3 years. But we've actually been selling product for just about a year and a half now.
Okay, and this is a formula that you put together. Is it one specific formula that is able to be, I guess, kind of consumed by adults and children?
Right. So we offer currently 2 meals. We have a vegan meal, kale, quinoa, and berries. We have another meal, chicken, peas, and carrots. So we have 2 meals that we offer to help give a variety for the diet.
Oh, very nice. And these can be purchased, through your website, wholestorymeals.com. But
Right.
are these covered by insurance as well for a
Right.
clinic or doctor's office to order?
Right. So typically people with feeding tubes, they are prescribed a formula since this is, their sole source of nutrition. And, doctors write a prescription and their medical supply company sends them their supplies that they need for the feeding equipment and, sometimes their food. So we also are in medical supply companies, and yes, the doctors write a prescription, insurance pays for it, and the medical supply company supplies it.
That's so neat. I mean, I know that getting things through the proper channels to get that process in place could, be very difficult. So the fact that you've done it, within these few years is really impressive. So you right now, your daughter, personally, I assume uses these formulas, and then is there other things that she also consumes, or is it really just the 2 formulas that you've created daily?
So how we started with Whole Story Meals is that we started blending before we even had Whole Story Meals. I started blending food in the blender for her because I didn't really want to do the commercial formulas because, the concerns with commercial formula is typically they can be 55% sugar. And not just sugar, but like maltodextrin, brown rice syrup, and the World Health Organization even recommends that you have a diet of less than 10% sugar, and it's even best if it's less than 5. So the big concern is we're feeding our most fragile members of society one of the worst diets I've ever heard of. There's no way that you're going to sit and eat a diet of 55% sugar, right? Like I can't see you doing that. And then to think about, they told me my daughter would live to be 1 or 2 years old and that she would pass away from secondary illnesses such as pneumonia, the flu, diabetes, things like that. Okay, so as a mama, I'm like, well, what can I do to help her live a longer life, right?
Of course.
I can feed her well. Right? I can feed her well. That's one thing I can do.
Control,
and so, right? And it's like, okay, I'm definitely not going to give her the excessive amount of sugar that even I wouldn't eat, right? So just think about it. If you're doing commercial formula, you would have to add sugar to Coca-Cola. That's how much sugar they give these kiddos for every single meal, every single day, for years on it. And then we wonder why I pass away, early, right? So it's very, as a mama bear, the fight starts to come out in me, right?
Right.
Because I'm just like, no, that's not gonna work for my daughter.
Why do you think that is? I mean, that's alarming. I mean, is it partly because, I know with sugar, like things can have longer shelf life? Is it part of the fact that there's money being saved because, these formulas can last longer? I mean, like, why would someone, want to have over 50% sugar?
Right, yeah. It flows well through a feeding pump. You're trying to get calories, right? So they're wanting calories. Sugar, they call it a carb, is a great source of a calorie. But we don't want empty calories. We want nutrient dense calories.
Absolutely.
A calorie of sugar does not equal the same calorie health benefits of a raspberry. It just doesn't. And then, another thing with the commercial formulas is you think about my formula, I'm using, blackberries, blueberries, all these great things, raspberries, and it's like that is much more expensive than sugar. Right. There's a big difference. And it's it's tough when you're getting reimbursed by insurance for the medical supply companies. It's very difficult for them because the pricing's kind of set, and it's set more for like a commercial formula that is inexpensive to make. And then mine is very expensive to make because we're doing the best that we can. We're doing a cold process. They have raw fruits and veggies. We're doing, a powder. We are just very, we don't add any sugar. We're very careful to make sure, just because I made this for my daughter, right? I'm like, I want it to be the best that I possibly can for her, to nourish her well, right? 100%. And so when you think about a commercial formula, there is no fruits, there's no vegetables, there's no whole grains. So that's not the way we've been taught to eat, you know what I'm saying? And so I just know that growing up, I'm like, fruits and veggies are good, sugar's bad. And I really think that our special needs community deserves to be fed well.
Of course, and I'm just thinking, this isn't even something that they get the flavor of. So overpowering it with sugar does nothing for like the taste buds. It's going through a feeding tube, so it's like, who cares if it tastes good? It's like, it's the nourishment that we're talking about here, right? So, is there
That's a beautiful thing.
I know. Is there other companies like yours out there that, I guess for one, are even have available codes to be, billed through insurance, or is yours the only one?
Yeah. So there are a couple other real food companies, but we are the only powdered real food. And so what having a powder does for you is it is lightweight. So like if you're traveling, you're not carrying all this liquid, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of times with tube-fed people, they struggle with volume tolerance. So if you're trying to give them a lot of calories, because a lot of them are teeny tiny, right? You're trying to up their calories, but they can't tolerate very much food in their stomach, then that makes it tough for them to take this big amounts of volume. So the thing that's beautiful about a powder is you can add less fluid, right? And then your calorie content goes up, your calories per milliliter. So, and then with a powder, you can increase your calories per milliliter by, instead of using water, you can use whole milk, you could use apple juice, unsweetened apple juice, things like that. And that also ups your caloric density. So your calories per milliliter just go up, and you don't have to feed them as large of a volume.
Okay. So with someone having a feeding tube and that being their only way to obtain nutrients, is it something that is done like 3 times a day, like what most people, have their meals, or how many times a day is that done?
It really depends on the individual. So for my daughter, she eats 6 times a day, just because we're trying to get these feedings in, and she needs a certain amount of calories, and we spread it out over, 6 times. So it's, it's a lot of setup and doing, and some people can just do 3 meals and they can, get all their calories in the 3 meals.
Okay.
But often it's more.
I see. So the fact that it's something that is prescribed, like you were saying before, why does it have to be prescribed? Isn't it something that, as a mother, you learn the first time, okay, this is what I need to give my child, but do they have to have like a prescription, or is that just mainly, I guess, tied to the insurance covering it? But if you're not playing, if the insurance not playing a part, then this can just be ordered off of your website at a retail price?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, so you do not have to have a doctor's prescription for it, but when you have a doctor's prescription, then insurance can cover it.
Okay, I see. Is there a big price difference on a per meal basis?
No, it's not, I wouldn't say there's a price difference per milliliter, but it's the way the price difference is kind of the way it's processed, if it's real food versus, synthetic formulas, things like that.
Yeah. So if somebody was to order off of your website, wholestorymeals.com, Is it something that they get, within 24 hours, 3 days? Like, what's the timeline on shipping?
Yeah. 1 to 3 days, depending on where you're located in the US.
Okay. And what's the, I guess, kind of shelf life for these meals? Or they have to be used within a week, or what's their timeline?
Right, that's a great question. So the shelf life is 1 to 2 years. It's 2 years. And then once you open it, this is a really unique feature about the powder, is it's good for 30 days. So typically a liquid starts, only lasts for 24 hours. And with a powder, it's shelf stable for 30 days. So you can open it, you can use it right away, or you can wait and there's no waste,
That's great. Yeah, so you can basically really stock up on what you need and have it for a long while. You're not needing to make a purchase every single week or something. Okay, because of that, the powder option is really what allowed you to create that type of shelf life. So,
right.
That's wonderful. So you have a social media, it's Whole Story Mills. Is that on Instagram and Facebook?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I guess just as far as some of the other leading brands, I think we kind of touch on that. It's mainly about the powder option, and then you guys even have the vegan, the vegan option of a meal to order versus, non-vegan.
Right. And also, we are the only cold processed meals available. So we actually have raw fruits and veggies, which, we need in our body. And the thing about the way, commercial formulas or even other real food formulas are made is they're heated to a very high temperature. And heating food to a very high temperature really reduces the nutritional value and can break down those, vitamins and the nutrition that we need, right?
Of course.
That's another thing that, it's a big deal for us to be, cold processed, and we're trying to focus on protecting the nutritional integrity of our foods.
Absolutely. This has been so great, Autumn. I'm so glad to be aware of your company. I think a lot of our guests that we've had on the show, family and children combined, need to really connect with you guys, because this is a lot of what they're needing too with feeding tubes. So thank you for being on the show. And we do have to wrap up, but I will obviously be in touch, and hopefully we can connect you with some families, and hopefully those listening were able to share your information as well.
Sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Please go to wholestorymills.com and shop for some of these amazing formulas for the men and women out there that do have feeding tubes. And this is where I would go. It's amazing as far as the nutrition value. What interesting information. So thank you all. We will be right back here with you next week at 7:30 p.m.